thought.
Welcome, everyone. Two more great guests today. Sage Steele joins me, a veteran broadcaster, journalist, television personality, covered major sporting events, Super Bowl, NBA Finals, the Masters, and she began her career early in local news before rising to national prominence and host at ESPN. You can follow her on X, Sage, S-A-G-E, Steele, S-T-E-E-L-E. And she made the mistake of questioning whether or not mandates for lots of things that we experienced during COVID, vaccine amongst them, whether we had the bioethical standing to do something like that. What a strange question. We'll get into that with Sage. She now has a podcast. We'll tell you about it. And then Corey DeAngelis comes in, school choice evangelist. He is a senior fellow at Reason Foundation, adjunct scholar at the Cato Institute. And he has been labeled number one enemy by Randy Baumgarten. Is that her name? At the Teachers Union. You can follow him. DeAngelis Corey will tell you about his story after this.
Our laws, as it pertains to substances, are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way. He was an alcoholic because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous. I'm a doctor, for sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that? I'm just saying, you go to treatment before you kill people. I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals. Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say.
Joint and muscle pains are exhausting and frustrating, but I've got a over-the-counter medication I want to introduce you to that provides great relief using the power of, check it out, chili peppers. Capsidin is made with a proprietary formula that contains no non-steroidal anti-inflammatory agents, no opioids, no anesthetic or steroid, nothing, no chance for addiction, no side effects, no chance it's going to interact with other medication you might be taking. Capsidin contains capsaicin, which is the substance in chili peppers that burns your tongue. That gives you that burny feeling. And of course, I've recommended capsaicin creams to patients over the years, but other capsaicin creams burn your skin. That's what makes capsidin so unique. In clinical trials, capsidin has actually been demonstrated not to burn.
I've been using capsidin to relieve my pain in my hands and my wrist from carpal tunnel syndrome and arthritis. The results have been amazing. I use it every day during my show, and I highly recommend it.
Get the pain relief you need from various sources, even backache, sprains, bruises even. Order now at capsidin.com/Drew to get a 15% discount plus free shipping. That is CAPSADYN, capsidin.com/DREW. Capsaicin is a great topical anesthetic. I've been using it for years, but now with capsidin, it is without any burning, which people used to complain about like crazy. Can we throw up the upcoming guests here, Caleb? Kelly Victory coming in tomorrow at noon with Harry Fisher. We've got Peter Navarro in here next week. This should be very interesting. Christine Anderson, of course, the Firebrand EP from the EU. And you can see the other guests up there coming our way. It should be very interesting, as always. Emily Barsh is working overtime for us. We appreciate it very much. And today is no exception. First up is Sage Steele. As I said, Sage was a news reporter and then ESPN anchor, covered everything. And something happened along the way here. She now has a new project I want her to tell you all about. Welcome, Sage Steele.
Mr. Drew, thank you. Thank you for having me. This is an honor.
It's a pleasure to have you. I had the great good fortune of eating dinner next to you at one of Dave Rubin's sort of soirees, which are always interesting, and sitting across from billionaires, and just always an interesting group he puts together.
Yeah, I was definitely out of place. Billionaires and doctors and geniuses, and it's okay. The most important part, I don't know if you're forgetting, that we actually shared a meal. Like, we couldn't decide. So
that's right. We split things. We split. And the bigger comedy at that table was Adam Carolla splitting a potato with the billionaire that was sitting next to him, which I thought was even more extraordinary.
Only Adam.
But yes, thank you for... Yes. And you were not out of place. You were very much a part of that whole little community we put together. And Dave, who now has moved away from us in Florida, we miss him, but he still comes back and puts together these little think tanks once in a while. And it was always very interesting to hear from him. And so tell us, first of all, about the new project. You have a great new podcast coming that's up. Tell me about it.
Thank you. It's so strange to be able to have a conversation and not feel like I have to edit or be careful. Like, it's the C word. It's an actual conversation. And it's just been really wonderful. My goal was to do just that and to talk to people, with whom I have different opinions and different experiences. And that to me is kind of what needs to happen in our country to kind of heal things, to attempt at least. But it's just really nice. And you know what it's like. You'll come in with a couple notes, but 99% of the time I don't even look at them. You start off and then you listen. Again, what a concept.
Yeah.
You listen and continue to go from there. But it's everybody from my first episode was with Dana White, who has become a really deep friend, and everyone from RFK Jr. to Sharon Osbourne, you name it, like all kinds of very unique people with awesome conversations. So it's weird.
Are those
though.
up
You
now?
don't have to edit your whole life.
Is all that up now, Sage, or is that stuff that's coming?
No, it's all up. The first podcast dropped on March 28th, and it's every Wednesday. John Voight is who dropped today. And so, it's on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm having profound guest envy. That's incredible. What a great lineup you've had. And not only that, but I got to say that, look at that. That's amazing. Caleb, well done on all the promotional links here.
Thanks, Caleb.
But what I noticed about what they're pushing out and what these shows have had, that, you say you don't edit, but you're a professional broadcaster. You have that ear when you know what the rhythm should be and how things need to go in a conversation in an environment like you've created. And so it's more than just a conversation. It's like you're managing it and making it really interesting for the viewer.
That's the goal. I'm certainly trying to do that. And listen, there has not been a single second of the now 21 episodes that we've dropped or Trump, Vivek Ramaswamy, like some interesting people that we've edited out, including when I've really screwed up, like the very first episode with Dana White, where again, he's a dear friend. And at the end of it, I tried to end with this dramatic question because I know how deep he is. And then I called him Joe Rogan instead of Dana White. And I got murdered. I mean, it went viral. I got killed for that. To this day, people come up to me in airports, "Hey, Joe Rogan." I'm like, "You're not even original. Find a better joke at this point." But it's like, I have 3 kids. I call my kids the wrong name. I screwed up. I could have edited it out. And I'm like, if you don't laugh at yourself, you got to get a life. So nothing is edited out, good, bad, or ugly.
And that is a great policy. That is the new world order. And you heard us talking a little bit before the show. We were all sort of chatting before the cameras turned on here. Caleb, help her understand what happens when things go wrong.
When things go wrong, things never go wrong here, Drew.
No, but I mean, not with us so much as when there's a gaffe, that's when things go viral. That's when you get real traction.
Exactly. Absolutely. That's always the biggest moments in the show. I already mark things for clips anytime something goes wrong. That's what works. That's what people like to see. They don't want to see normal.
Yeah, it's part of any conversation, right? And Dana just kept sending me clips. He's like, "This is so amazing. It did it again. It's got 30 million views." My first episode, not the episode, but the clips. And thanks to Dana's reaction too. So we hang out and we laugh about it. Like, that's a good way to launch your show, is with a screw up.
Yeah, I agree. So what have you learned? Are there things in the core? I mean, I know I learn things every day when I interview people on this show. Are there things that have stood out for you across these interviews that you thought, wow, I really feel like this expanded my worldview, or I learned something about somebody that I thought I knew and now I know them in a way I didn't know them before?
Every single person. I have learned so much, because you can do so much, research, I guess, on the internet. And I do a lot of listening to other podcasts and preparing for my own. But at the end of the day, you end up finding so much more if you're really listening and then diving deeper and deeper. I'd say at least half of them, there's been tears shed. That's not the goal. I'm not trying to make everybody cry, but at the end of the day, when you really can dive deep with people. So that was always my goal. And I've said this to my kids. I have kids that are in college, 18, 20, and 22. And, sometimes people can say and do hurtful things or things that are confusing or controversial. And to me, instead of like snapping at them, I want to understand why. And sometimes, not necessarily an excuse for bad behavior, but there might be a reason. And so when you talk to people and find out their reason, every opinion, in my opinion, is based on someone's experience. And I've been so not surprised, but just further enlightened about how many things people are going through that you might not know because it looks like they've got the perfect life on TV, the makeup, the hair, the glamorous lifestyle, social media, but everybody's got something, and I'm so honored that many of them have chosen to share. But it's just a reminder, we all are dealing with crap. Lead with kindness.
We're all just human beings. That is so true. But now I'm going to drill on a little bit of your stuff, which is you told me something at dinner, which all of us at the table were like, huh? Like, really? Incredible. And anybody seeing you now would have difficulty understanding how that is possible. Your shyness, your introvertedness.
Now I'm going to get shy. I'm going to shut down the rest of the interview. We're done. Oh gosh, my parents, who are probably watching because they love you more than they love me. I was an incredibly shy kid with this crazy dream, not just to be a sportscaster, but to be on ESPN and to host SportsCenter. And that's exactly what I ended up doing, but not without my mom and dad really pushing me. And I mean, they were about to take me to doctors because I was weird. I would only talk around family and very close friends, and ended up introducing me to horses. Horses can be therapeutic. It really pulled me out of my shell. And my dad's like, yeah, this TV dream is great, said my parents, but you have to talk if you want to be on TV. So we've got some things to work on. And then my dad challenged me a lot with sports trivia, et cetera. That's another way that we really bonded. But yeah, I listen, I still walk into rooms and feel myself tightening up on the inside.
Yeah.
But I take a deep breath, and now I know how to flip that switch. And the same goes for, live national television. You just have to have confidence that you can do it. And the more you push through that fear, I am kind of proof that you can do it.
Yeah, it's amazing. I want to hear a little more about the steps you went through. So if anyone is sort of interested in doing something that they may not be obvious that they have talent for, but they really instinctively feel they want to, what the steps are. But before we go through that, what do you think it was social anxiety? Because that kind of tightening you feel when you go in a room kind of sounds like social anxiety to me.
Maybe. I think back then in the 80s, because I'm 51 now, and back then I feel like we didn't have names for all of those things. You just push through. I find myself even today challenging myself, though. For example, this past weekend, I was outside of this New York City here, about 40 minutes away in New Jersey, and it was a charity golf tournament for Goose, the late Tony Saragusa from NFL fame, who was a dear friend of mine who passed away from sleep a couple of years ago, and it was a charity event for him. And the only person I knew was his daughter. And so I walk in, and there's a big, concert, and kind of just informal, but very small group, 70 people or so, but everybody came with a date, right? And I'm divorced, I'm single now, and it's uncomfortable to walk into parties and restaurants and movie theaters everywhere alone. And I'm doing that a lot now. And so I find, as I step outside of my body, that I continue to challenge myself with things that are a little bit hard and uncomfortable when you walk in alone with like an event, and you're in all white and everybody's got someone on their arm, and I don't. But I don't know. I look back through all those years of pushing through those fears, and that's one of them. Even at my age, I still have to keep challenging myself. And I feel like if I don't, how can I push my kids to do the same?
And what were the steps that got you eventually end up as a newscaster?
It was either do it or you're not going to ever come close to achieving this dream. Again, my dad would kind of just throw out statistics with the Denver Broncos football team, for example. He's a military officer. I'm an Army brat. I lived all over the world, and we moved to Colorado Springs in 1984. So football fans, John Elway was drafted in 83, and it was Broncos fever. And it's like, okay, you want to, compete with the guys with all their trivia knowledge with sports. Okay. Number 76, what's his name? What's his position? Where did he go to college? And so it was like quick. And so sometimes it was just trivia. Other times it was, okay, that kid that moved in next door, don't wait for her to come over. You go over, you say hi, you introduce yourself. And I would shake It's like, I don't want to do that. What if they don't like me? And I felt different. My dad's Black, my mom's white, I'm biracial. And in the military, that's very accepting world. It's so accepting and diverse there. Outside of the military, it wasn't as much. And so it's just walking in there anyway. When you're the new kid all the time, you have to go up to the other kid on the playground and say, do you want to play kickball? Do you want to play tetherball? They don't necessarily come to you. So it was little challenges to find friends as a kid, and little by little, through junior high and high school. Sports, by the way, was huge. And we were required to play a sport. And I required my kids to do the same, not just to push through their shyness, but to learn that it's not just about you. You are on a team. And then if you don't end up liking the lacrosse team, well, too bad, you're going to finish the season because you are now committed to your teammates and your coaches. But there's little ways to, I think, hold yourself accountable as an adult, and certainly for parents to do the same for their kids. If my parents hadn't held me accountable, my crazy dream to get on SportsCenter would never have happened.
So do you have brothers and sisters?
I do, 2 younger brothers.
Brothers. So you're the only daughter, you're the only girl, because I hear your dad like channeling right through you. And I'm imagining, and I wonder, not even imagine, I wonder if and you were the oldest, if you had any resistance to some of the sports, you know what I mean? Did that seem right to you? It seemed like a good thing? Because you said you sometimes wanted to stop, it sounded like, and he said, no, these are really important lessons. And I thank God for your dad. I mean, you should be, again, I just, I admire that kind of parent. Yeah. But did you have any special? Did you have special challenges as the daughter? I guess that's the question I'm asking.
I wouldn't even say challenges. I didn't look at it that way. I will say I did have the disease of being a pleaser, which I'm almost cured. I don't know, Dr. Drew, you tell me, is it ever fully curable?
It really doesn't. It's an orientation, and it's okay. It's okay because like any sort of phenomenon, some psychological phenomenon, it becomes a liability in certain settings, but it can also be a significant asset. And so what I'm guessing is you're also very sensitive to other people. You pick up on lots of things. That's all very much of an asset.
I'm very empathic, I think. I do feel everything. And I did want to, when my younger brothers would act up, because of course I was perfect and they were annoying. And so I wanted to fix that so then it wouldn't upset my mother. I will say this, my father, yes, West Point graduate and very structured, but so loving. My mother is the one that's like, she's half Irish, half Italian, like get out of the way, and my mother's the one with that big personality. And she taught me something that I'll never forget. Being a military spouse, it's not about you. You're the one that has to hold the fort down. And my mother is so talented and so smart and can do so many things, but was never really able to, because when you're moving across the world every 2 to 3 years, you can't, really establish a career. So she was incredible with us 3 kids at home and then started working as well. But she said something to me that I'll never forget. When the fear would build up, she talked about how she regretted not being able to really try and go have her career and try some of her dreams because she couldn't. So she said to me, she's like, you have to always try, even if you fall on your face, because I don't want you to grow up and have regrets for not trying. So when I get that fear, I think back to my mother, who sacrificed so much for us, and then didn't feel like she was able, because of the moving, right? And having us as her commitment in my dad's career. So if I ever doubt it, I think of my mom and how she wasn't really able to. So I'm like, get over yourself, Sage. You get in there and you try it for your mom, if for no other reason.
Well, clearly that guiding philosophy has really served you very, very well. Congratulations in that. But I'm guessing some of that, what should we say, independence of thought and action is how you got in a little bit of trouble, maybe. Can you tell us that story with the ESPN? And by the way, I don't want to put the slightest pejorative spin on that. I admire it, and it's a lot to take. We all had to go through our own cancellations or whatever the hell was going on during COVID for daring to have an opinion. But my sense of what happened to you is you barely raised an opinion. But tell us what happened.
Yeah. I'll say my poor mother and father during the last several years where, no matter what, as you and I talked about a little bit, like no matter how old your kids are, they're still your kids and you're still worried and you're still very protective. And so even at my age, my mom sometimes is like, can you not say that, please? Can you take that post down? And she kind of gives up now. She's like, okay, forget it. It's too late. Basically, yes, I think there's a couple of things I said when I, dared to speak on a podcast on an off day and a completely separate platform, speaking about my experience as a biracial woman, my experience as a woman in a man's world, growing up in NFL and NBA locker rooms in my career. And most importantly, my opinion on being forced to get the COVID vaccine in order to keep my job at ESPN and Disney. And when I spoke up about it on a podcast separately, I literally, Dr. Drew, had just come from the stupid grocery store pharmacy getting the shot. And it was the very last state possible in order for me to be fully vaxxed by September 30th, 2021. So I was hot. And I was actually really disgusted with myself for caving and giving in. But I have 3 kids. I am divorced, and I'm 100% the financial supporter of the kids and my ex-husband, et cetera. So people say you have a choice, and I guess I did. But when you have to support everyone, you have tough decisions to make. And so that day, on the very last day, I went and got the shot and came home. Emotional. Can I tell you the story real quick about the vaccine? Because I'll never forget walking into the pharmacy and I had red eyes and I sat down and the nurse, whoever she was, I think it was a nurse, hopefully, looked at me and said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No." I said, "I'm being forced to do this. And I think it's like, I'm devastated. I don't believe in this. I just want a little more research. This has happened so quickly. I'm no doctor, but it just doesn't feel right. It's so fast." And this woman looked at me and she said, "I am so sorry that you are being forced to do this. And this is so wrong." And she held my hand. She held my hand and she said, "Just close your eyes, sweetheart." And she put it in my arm. I get choked up because something in me changed at that moment where I'd always had control of my body. And at that moment, I didn't. And in order to keep my job and support my family, and a job, by the way, that I loved, that dream since I was 11 years old, I was living it. And I changed at that moment. So then I went home and did the podcast, and Cutler said, "Can I ask you about that Band-Aid on your arm?" And I swear to God, I forgot to take it off. I was rushing. And I just said, "Listen, I think it's sick and scary for any company to force their employees to do something like this. But I complied because I love my job and I need my job. And it's Disney and it's a global company, and I'm not surprised, but I'm disgusted. In the meantime, I complied, and that was the beginning of the end. And I will say this: I ended up filing a lawsuit because they suspended me with pay, but suspended me, took assignments away, made me publicly apologize, and issued a statement, et cetera, while at the same time allowing my peers to go on ESPN platforms and speak about their politics and how upset they were about Roe versus Wade being overturned. And all I wanted was consistency. All or nothing. You don't allow some to speak, especially on air. I did mine separately because I do believe journalistically that's not my job to spew my opinion about a vaccine or abortion on a sports network. That's just me, but I got in trouble for it. And because the punishment continued, I decided to stand up with this lawsuit. And it devastated me to have to make the decision. But I literally would not change a thing. I had so many people, even at that network, quietly come up and whisper or reach out to me and say thank you because they felt forced and so upset as well. So yes, the trajectory of my career and my life has changed drastically. But the night before the lawsuit dropped, I talked to each of my kids separately. At the time, they were 15, 17, and 19. And each one kind of handled it differently. And I just wanted them to know, listen, this is what's happening tomorrow. There might be some headlines, but just know you don't have to defend me. You don't ever have to defend anything I'm saying. But if teachers ask, which they had, or coaches ask, which they had, or friends parents, which had all happened, I said, don't ever feel like you have to defend me. Just remind people, everybody has a right to their own opinion, including your mom, even if you disagree with your mom at sometimes. And so I just was choked up and I said, I'm sorry if anything comes at you. I've got your back, but don't ever defend me if you don't want to. And my son, who's in the middle of my two crazy girls, looked at me and said, Mom, it's about time you stood up for yourself. And at that moment, I sobbed, because I thought all these years I had kept my mouth shut to protect them, because I didn't want them to feel any wrath that came towards me, because people go after my kids on social media too. So as parents, we think we're protecting our kids from everything. But look, he was quietly watching me make myself smaller and go against what I was preaching to protect them. So I think we do a disservice. It's how you do it, certainly, but I'm preaching to them to be strong and to stand up. And I was doing the opposite. So I wouldn't change a thing. And I'm proud now that I stood up. And no matter what, even if I fail everything I try, my kids, and my son in particular, saw their mom not cower to Disney when I was scared to death and didn't have the money to fight them. So I'm grateful for all of it.
As God is my witness, that story you just told us is something that should be laid down in the history books. I hope that this little clip shows up when people think about and try to analyze this historical moment when government excess ruled the day throughout the world, to the point where you didn't just lose track of your career, but your body. Your bodily integrity was violated because of an hysteria. And that hysteria was wrong. It got played out in the courts, and they agreed with you. And you have no, other than the suit, you may have injured yourself with this. And who's going to say I'm sorry to you? This is the I think you used the word disgusting. You should be disgusted. It was a disgusting chapter. And I want people to apologize who forced those things. I want people to rethink what their position was. Not that, oh my God, vaccines are all bad, or that vaccines had no utility against the Alpha and Delta outbreaks, but that people like you, a young, healthy person, were forced, mandated by a soulless employer and a government that put the employer in that position. It is disgusting. And thank God you did it, and thank God your kids have now a great role model. I hope your mom and dad understood you were channeling them. I know it made them anxious, but I hope they felt good about it, because they should. What do you say?
I know my parents are proud of me. I know I've caused them a lot of grief and stress, and I'll never forget one moment in particular when I was suspended. And the funny thing is I made the comments the day I got the shot. 2 weeks later, when it came out, and then I was suspended, I came down with COVID. So the irony of it all was just too much. And so I was sick, and my father has 2 kinds of cancer and wasn't supposed to be around me, and this is October 2021. And so my dad and mom got in their car. They lived in Pennsylvania at the time, and I'm outside of Hartford, Connecticut for the moment, moving soon. And my mom and dad came to my house, and when these lies and headlines were coming out, exaggerating everything I said, and the headlines were pretty bad. People made up lies to try to become part of a story about, I think a lot of it is because of my politics as well. And if this was a chance to bring me down, my mom and dad came, and literally I was on the floor, Dr. Drew, yes, I was sick. I actually got super sick from COVID after getting that vaccine that guaranteed that I wouldn't get COVID.
Yes.
And lifted me up and put themselves at risk for my dad, in his late 70s with going
with
through
cancer.
Chemotherapy. Yeah. And so it was such a moment that was really hard. And I was so worried about them. But it just taught me so much about being a parent and that love that you have no matter what, and you put yourself at risk. And I think, I hope my kids never have to make that decision. I will say, and I've talked to them about it and my parents, and 9/11, never forget. COVID, never forget. And I'm not trying to compare fully, but when there are wrongs done, we cannot forget. And when I look back at giving in and being disgusted with myself for, I guess, caving, even though I felt like I had no choice, I'm more disgusted with the trust that I and others put into our government, our health officials, doctors, hospitals, all of it. And so I'm going to be one of those screaming from the mountaintops, like, don't dare, or go for it. Try me again. Because what I found was that by having a loud mouth and talking about these things, and then standing up after I eventually lifted my eyes up off the ground, and I wasn't making eye contact in airports or even at my work because I was told by my bosses everybody hated me, and I had, embarrassed them and brought on such trouble for my employers and how terrible. Once I lifted my eyes up, I realized, oh my gosh, I was speaking for others who also felt like they had no choice. So if this sounds dramatic, and I'll shut up after this, but I now know why God put me on this earth, to be a mother to Quinn, Nicholas, and Evan, and to speak up for those who feel like they can't, including myself. All those years of feeling like I need to be quiet and behave, and I don't want to be too much, and I don't want to be too loud, and I don't want to piss anybody off. And now, look what that got me. Even when you're the most loyal employee and you don't fit the right narrative, they're going to get rid of you or crush you if you're a little bit different, even though that's what we preach is diversity and equity and tolerance and inclusion. So you've got to be true to yourself. Do it in a kind way, giving others grace, because I know what it's like to not receive that. And so I'm glad that it happened to me. And that's why I don't live in fear anymore. And it's all been a real blessing.
I can see that. And it's a blessing for others as well, because it's such an illustration of what many people went through during that dark time. And you said as you were finishing your comments there that you'll shut up. Don't do that anymore. Don't shut up. Don't even say I'll shut up. We do not want you to shut up. So no more of that. But I was thinking about your mom and her outspokenness and how she's created Frankenstein, her own Frankenstein. I hope, and she should be proud of it. She should be proud of it. And finally, before I take this.
Really quick, Dr. Joe, I think you'll love this. This is perspective for me. And then I'll shut up. Wait, I can't say that. My mom and dad got married in 1971. My mom's white, my dad's black. On my X handle, on my Twitter handle, it's been pinned there for 6 or 7 years. It's a beautiful story that NFL Films did. It's a long story about my parents and what they went through, and being in 1971 an interracial couple and how their families handled it. And it was ugly and it was devastating. So when I think about what I've been through, I have perspective. It is nothing compared to what the decision my mom had to make to marry a black man. Her family disowned her for doing that. And to at 22 years old, make that choice, right? That's the story. That's my little niece. And so I have perspective about what they are. About
Is that them?
That's my mom and dad.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and they're 78 and 75. And so
I love it.
All have to maintain perspective, because yes, my stuff was not easy and my life has changed drastically and it's been embarrassing and scary, but like 53 years married, my mom and dad, they pushed through so much more. And I think if we all look around us, our stories are real. But I also know of 2 people that are kind of awesome who went through more and have given me strength through it all.
But in a way, I'm glad they laid down their story. And by the way, I hope you'll write about yours, because this stuff needs to be memorialized. And by the way, include their story in it, because these are each historical, stories of historic importance for the moment in which people were living. And I would not diminish yours any more than with the crucible they carried. Yes, it was very difficult, and yes, they went through a lot, I'm sure, but you did too. And it was I was just thinking about you mentioned that your peers are able to at the time that you were being dismissed, or at least sidelined, so to speak, they were talking about their political views on Roe versus Wade and bodily autonomy. And in the meantime, you had completely lost your bodily autonomy, completely. And the irony should be lost on no one.
And that's the devastating thing, right? Again, as a parent, you have to have consistency with your rules, and they just allowed it to go complete opposite. If I had gotten on that podcast and shamed people and called them anti-vaxxers and all of those things, and you don't care about my grandma next door and all the things that so many people were saying, and some of the other things that I said that I guess were apparently controversial, if I had said those things, I would have been celebrated. I would still be probably there. And that's why, honestly, for like 15 years, I began public speaking and working at ESPN, which was in 2007 when I had little babies. They were 11 months old, 2 and 4, when I started at ESPN as this young mother and trying to juggle it all and scared. And I've always talked about diversity of thought. First and foremost, if you begin with that, all the other diversity stuff, this, whatever it is, that's easy. But and so I've always said that, and I'm laughing now because, and I'm not, I say that facetiously, I'm not, it's pathetic that people crush you for having a different thought process, different opinion, which again is based on experience. So I will never stop pushing that diversity of thought, because you're a complete hypocrite if you push it in every other way without that being the primary one.
And so I hope this audience sees how interesting Sage would be with that courage. That's what that is. I know it doesn't feel like it, but that's what you're doing it because it just feels right. Okay. And I understand, one of the things I've come to understand now is that when you're doing just what you know to be right, it doesn't feel courageous because you're just doing what's right. But it also will create some very interesting conversation and a great podcast. And I'm just so glad you're doing it and bringing all of this sensibility to really interesting guests too. That's the other part. I mean, I suspect you're going to pull things out of people they wouldn't say in other environments. So just congratulations on all this. Congratulations on standing up. Congratulations on your kids. Just so much to be thankful for and grateful for. Not the least of which is that you shared some time with us here.
Thank you so much. It's really been an honor, and I almost ruined my mascara, but I kept it in.
I didn't want to mess your makeup up. But by the way, Caleb, I bet you had a reaction.
This is just,
Caleb, I bet you,
I'm kind of speechless right now. Yeah, that was just such a powerful story. I was not what I was expecting. And I really think this pandemic, everything, it just really exposed the people in the industry who are the actual pioneers and the actual people with actual bravery. Like, people can go look it up online.
Yeah, the word it's the word bravery. I think it's the people that can know what's right, see
Integrity.
What's right, and when you know in your heart, when you know what's right, your action is simple. You just have to do what's right, and that's what you do.
If you look at that story on X of my parents, my dad made us kids memorize part of the cadet prayer because he went to West Point, and the part that to this day, I repeat it every day. And when I was young, it was annoying. Now I'm like, oh my goodness, help me to choose the harder right instead of the easier wrong, and to never be content with a half truth when the whole can be one. That has guided me in everything, as much as it was annoying to memorize as an 8-year-old kid. But we all usually know the harder right versus the easier wrong. And I'm done telling half truths. Forget it. This is not what God put us here to do, is to hide out of fear. So all those push-ups I had to do as a little kid with those room inspections and the cadet prayer, it was worth it. And I just didn't think it would come out this way with a crazy lawsuit and everything else. But again, I know why I'm here, and I'm thankful for you. And I would love to do another surf and turf sharing dinner in LA sometime.
Absolutely. Done and done. And Sage, good luck with the move and your kids and everything. And tell them one more time where you want them to go.
Yes. Hi, there it is. The Sage Steele Show. It's on YouTube. I'm having a blast with that. I didn't know about this whole YouTube thing. Oh my goodness. Subscriptions, like and subscribe. Everywhere you get your podcasts. Did I say it right? Wherever you get your podcasts.
Oh, our friend Drea. Did you talk to Drea recently?
Drea
is our friend.
She was amazing. And then at Laura Trump here at Trump Towers in New York City, RFK was fascinating, drove up a little controversy.
Isn't he great?
Yeah, really, really cool. And sharing what she's been through with Ozzy, and to share that struggle with the man she loves. So I'm so grateful that they've opened up to me. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Sage. We'll talk soon.
Guys.
You got it. And I will be back in mere moments with Corey DeAngelis. Many of us have not gotten over COVID. I'm not talking about the virus itself, but the response. We were flabbergasted by what the government could do to us. There's no telling what they might pull next time, and it's looking more like there will be a next time. So we all have to be what I call rationally ready. That's where the wellness company comes in. TWC is about access to physicians via telehealth, access to potentially life-saving medication. Years ago, having access to medication and telehealth might have seemed crazy, but now it seems crazy not to. Now, with claims that gain-of-function research have been done on the bird flu, I urge everyone to take control of their healthcare with the help of the wellness company. Go to drdrew.com/TWC for 10% off all their products, including the 4 medical kits, each of which has a different purpose. And we've added Tamiflu to one of them in case the bird flu does become a problem for humans. Be rationally ready. drdrew.com/TWC for 10% off. Of course, I'm a fan of the healthy aging supplement True Niagen. I've been taking it almost for a decade myself. This supplement boosts NAD, which your cells need to survive properly metabolically, and it goes down as we age. It does so with a nutrient called nicotinamide riboside, or NR, specifically patented form of NR called Niagen. It's the most efficient and trusted NAD booster. NAD can also play a role in reproductive health. Boosting NAD is recommended with prenatal vitamins for women over 30 looking to start a family. Here's Dr. Amy, also known as the Egg Whisperer, a highly influential specialist in this area.
That was when I said, this is amazing. I need every single person going through fertility to take it. I not only take it myself, my patients have shared stories. They took it and then they got pregnant naturally. And that's really my goal, is I want people to empower themselves with the tools so that they can get pregnant without my help.
True Niagen is an amazing NAD booster. You're going to want to add it to your reproductive health arsenal. And of course, it's in our family of Dr. Drew sponsors. Go to drdrew.com/True Niagen for 20% off your order. That is drdrew.com/True Niagen. Enter Dr. Drew at checkout for 20% off. I'm excited to bring you a new product, a new supplement, Fatty. I take it. I make Susan take it. My whole family takes it. This comes out of, believe it or not, dolphin research. The Navy maintains a fleet of dolphins. And a brilliant veterinarian recognized that these dolphins sometimes developed a syndrome identical to our Alzheimer's disease. Those dolphins were deficient in a particular fatty acid. She replaced the fatty acid, and they didn't get the Alzheimer's. Humans have the same issue, and we are more deficient in this particular fatty acid than ever before. And a simple replacement of this fatty acid called C15 will help us prevent these syndromes. It's published in a recent journal called Metabolites. It's a new nutritional C15, pentadecanoic acid, it's called. The deficiency that we are developing for C15 creates something called the cellular fragility syndrome. This is the first nutritional deficiency syndrome to be discovered in 75 years and may be affecting us in many ways, and as many as 1 in 3 of us. This is an important breakthrough. Take advantage of it. Go to fatty15.com/Dr. Drew to receive 15% off a 90-day starter kit subscription, or use code Dr. Drew at checkout for that 15% off, or just go to our website, drdrew.com/fatty15.
I ain't Dr. Drew.
Dr. Drew. You want to spend the whole session talking about Dr. Drew?
There you go. Even you call him Dr. Drew.
And finally, a reminder, you can follow Sage Steele on X at Sage Steele, STEELE, and sagesteele.com. Corey DeAngelis is been labeled the school choice evangelist, the most effective school choice advocate since Milton Friedman. He's the executive director of Educational Freedom Institute, a senior fellow at Reason Foundation. The Parent Revolution is the book. Adjunct scholar at Cato Institute, board member at Liberty Justice Center, PhD in education policy from University of Arkansas. Follow him on X at DeAngelis Corey, DeAngelis, Corey, Corey, and also federationforchildren.org. Please welcome Corey DeAngelis. Corey, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So you made a little bit of a stir today when the teachers union took aim at you and a couple other folks. Tell me about that.
Yeah, look, the teachers union, Randy Weingarten had me on a screen with Betsy DeVos and Chris Rufo as their top three enemies. But listen to me, parents, they're not coming after me. They're coming after you and your right to direct the upbringing of your children. I and other education freedom fighters are just standing in their way. But I actually dedicated the book to Randy Weingarten, The Parent Revolution. I dedicated it to her for overplaying her hand and inadvertently doing more to advance school choice and homeschooling than anyone could have ever imagined. The teachers unions held children's education hostage during COVID. They fought to keep the schools closed as long as possible. They engaged in fear mongering every step of the way. They wanted to get ransom payments from taxpayers. They got a lot of money, but they showed families what was happening in the classroom, which has led to unprecedented expansions of school choice all across the country. And yeah, there's from her event the other day. They had their annual convention in Houston, Texas, and they labeled us three as their top three enemies: Chris Rufo, myself, and Betsy DeVos. And look, when you're catching flack like this, it means you're over the target. We've had 12 states pass universal school choice in the past 3 years alone. Since 2021, we've had more expansions on school choice than in the preceding 3 decades. And it's Randy Weingarten's own fault. They tried to leverage those school closures for more money. They were actually, the Chicago Teachers Union deleted a tweet saying, quote, "The push to reopen schools is rooted in sexism, racism, and misogyny." Randy was threatening strikes in 2020. She was calling President Trump's plan to reopen schools reckless, callous, and cruel. And guess what? You know this. They also lobbied the CDC to make it more difficult to reopen schools. That hurt kids in a lot of ways, but it also exposed the rot in the government school system, which woke up parents like we've never seen before.
A couple of things. Kayla, put that picture back up of Corey being enemy number one. That reminds me of a scene from Animal House when they're putting up pictures of a possible, sort of, what do they call them when somebody's rushing the fraternity members? They're throwing eggs at it and throwing pictures up there and spitting on it. It's just such a bizarre impulse to put somebody's picture on a big screen like that and then take aim at them. It's just ridiculous. The other thing, I had an interesting experience. You mentioned sexism, and it just occurred to me that I was doing a nightly news broadcast on the local Channel 11 in Los Angeles. And we were at 7:00 at night, and we'd every night sort of update what's going on with COVID. And we were there the night that the LA Unified School District decided to close, right? And there's footage of me talking to one of the school board members going, why are you doing this? What consultant, what infectious disease doctor? I couldn't believe it. I was like, where did you get this idea from? We just think it's the right thing to do. So, okay, they do it. Fast forward a year, where there's talk about opening things up. If you remember, gloves and lucite sheets and nonsense, things that just interfered with the flow of air through a classroom and made the probability of transmission worse. But in any event, I had what I think was like she must have been the secretary of the union or something, or it was not the LA Unified representative. It was somebody from the teachers union. And she was going through this live on television. She's going through this list of things, of demands that the teachers needed to open the schools. And I said, okay, let's do it. That's great. Okay, you want those things? Let's do it. How long is it going to take? And she goes, well, and I go, yeah, how long? How long to do that? How much is it going to cost? How long to do it? You're a sexist. You're sexist. That was her response to me going, let's go do this. Let's do it now. You want that? Let's get it. What's it going to take? How much is it going to cost? How long are we going to do it? You're sexist. I mean, literally, that's how insane they were at the time.
I mean, Dr. Drew, the problem is they'd move the goalpost every step of the way, too. They put the teachers at the front of the vaccine lines. That wasn't good enough. They called for more money. That wasn't good enough. In LA, in particular, more money. They did that everywhere. But they also included in their list of demands police-free schools, Medicare for all, a wealth tax, a ban on charter schools, things that had nothing to do with reopening the schools. And it just showed you they overplayed their hand. They showed their true colors. And Cicely Meyer-Cruz, the boss of the teachers union in LA, she actually said that there's no such thing as learning loss. I mean, they tried to hide from any form of accountability whatsoever. in LA as well on Facebook. They had a private union Facebook group where they told their members, well, if you're going to go vacation in Cozumel or wherever overseas, then it's fine, but don't post about it, because they saw in Chicago, their board member was vacationing in Puerto Rico and got a lot of backlash.
I remember
because
that.
she was saying it wasn't safe enough to go back to work, but vacation, that's fine, thousands of miles away.
Oh, get on a plane, no problem, but not a classroom, not without lucite sheets between students and teachers. Ridiculous. So
well, and
I think people
the
get
private schools were open. The private schools were open.
Of course. The politicians had to send their kids somewhere, Corey. The governor and the assembly needed to send their kids somewhere. And the mayor and the county supervisors, I mean, their kids needed to go to school.
Meanwhile, Governor Newsom, we all heard about the French Laundry stuff, but he also got some pushback after he went on the news complaining about public school Zoom school that wasn't working, while he was sending his own kids to in-person private school in Sacramento.
Of course.
I mean, school choice for me, but not for thee. Open schools for me, but not for thee. It's total hypocrisy.
So back to what you are advocating for. I've got some questions, and I want to clarify things for people that are interested in the topic. Because there's sort of three. First of all, I'd like to know, I really want to understand why it seems, and I think this is generally true, that the average teacher in the public school system is against charter schools. And it seems so counterintuitive to me. I've known some very, very fine public school teachers, a lot of them very old school, much older, who are really concerned about charter schools. I want to understand it, and so I've questioned them about it, and it gets down to we're going to lose funding, I think, and the kids that need the funding are going to lose the funding. I think that's what it gets down to. Or am I right, or is there something more there?
It's fear-mongering from people at the top like Randy Weingarten, who make over $500,000 a year. The money's there. I mean, look at over time. Since 1970 in the U.S., per student education funding has increased by 170% after adjusting for inflation. Teacher salaries have only gone up by about 10% over the same period. So the money's not making its way into the classroom. It goes towards administrative bloat, staffing surges.
Of course.
We do have—
it's like healthcare, same thing.
It's the same problem.
Same thing as healthcare.
2000, we have data looking nationwide. The number of students and teachers in the system have been steadily increasing since that time by about 7%. But the number of administrators in the system increased by 90%. But look, the main argument that the unions will put forth is that this is stealing money from the public schools, but the money doesn't belong to the government schools. It's meant for educating the kids. It should follow them to the institution that works best for them. That could be the public school that they're assigned to. If you want that option, that is still on the table. But the people making this argument, they have no confidence in the product that they're delivering. If you think that everybody's going to flee when given the choice, what does that tell you about how confident you are in the services that you're providing?
Right.
The best public schools won't be worried because they're doing a good job.
So help people understand the difference between what you mean by school choice, charter schooling, homeschooling. I think people get a little bit kind of uncertain about what we're discussing there versus public education.
In the traditional system in most states, you live where you live and you're assigned to a school just based on where you live. It makes no sense. Just imagine if we did this with groceries or with restaurants. If you were assigned to a government-run grocery store, they were giving you groceries that gave you food poisoning each day. Maybe the shelves were empty. And in order to get something else, you had to pick up your bags and move houses to get access to a better grocery store. That would make zero sense. It would cause a lot of monopoly power in the system. And that's the same problem we have with government schools today. If you want to get access to a better so-called public school, which I don't like to call them public schools because families have actually lied about their address and gone to jail or been fined for doing so to get into better so-called public schools because they discriminate on the basis of zip code, or you have to pay out of pocket. You have to pay twice, essentially, if you want to go to a private school, once through the tax system for the public school, and then again out of pocket for the private school. And that makes zero sense. That also makes zero sense. And it creates a lot of monopoly power for the traditional system. And so what do I mean by school choice? Any policy that allows the money that's meant for educating your child to follow that student to the school that works best for them. That could be another public school that you're not assigned to. That could be a charter school, which is still defined as a public school in most states, but it's also independently operated. Or it could be a scholarship mechanism where that money that would have followed you to the government school, you could take it there again if you want, but if not, you could take a fraction of those dollars to a private school to pay for tuition and fees. That's the basic mechanism. More recently, it's been education savings accounts, much like health savings accounts. But it's the money that would have followed you to the government school that you're assigned to. A portion of it can go into your parent-directed education savings account. And then you can use it for private school. You could use it for charter school. You could use it for home-based education, including curriculum or private tutors and so on. Any approved education expenditure, the money follows the child is the basic concept of school choice.
It's still, when you describe it like that, it's mysterious to me why charter schools would be threatening. I don't get it. It's still a public school system. I don't get it. I guess the administrators get less money that way.
That's the problem. And something that I didn't point out a second ago is that, look, in the US, we spend about $20,000. If you look at the National Center for Education Statistics, it's $20,000 per kid per year in the government schools. That's state sources, local sources, and federal sources. When school choice policies pass, it's typically just the state portion of the funding, which is about half of the total, let's say 10,000, that follows the student. So on a per student basis, the public schools actually financially benefit. They get to keep thousands of dollars for students they're no longer educating. The problem is they hear from the union fear mongering from Randy Weingarten, and they want to keep 100% of the funding. They don't want to just keep 50% of the funding. But that is a good deal for them. I mean, just imagine if you stopped shopping at Walmart, you wanted to go to Safeway or Trader Joe's, and Walmart got to keep half of your grocery money each week. That'd be a good deal for Walmart. I argue this is also a good deal for the public schools. They get to keep any money at all for kids that are no longer there.
What is it about you three that makes you public enemy number one to Randy Weingarten?
Well, Dr. Drew, we're winning so much, I'm almost getting tired of winning. We haven't seen this much advancement on school choice ever. I mean, but it's their own fault, and we rub it in their face as the reality is that the unions did this to themselves. A lot of people say I'm a pretty influential school choice advocate, but the school choice MVP of the last 3 years is Randy Weingarten, Becky Pringle, and the teachers unions, because it's their own fault. They've been stepping in it over and over again. They've been so drunk on power for so long. They just can't reverse course. And school choice is also becoming a political winner. You think about in Texas, at my home state, you had 21 so-called Republicans joined all the Democrats in voting against school choice, blocking it in the House last year in my home state of Texas. Well, in the primaries, now 14 of those guys are gone. Basically, that is impossible because incumbents usually win their reelection 95% of the time. And for far too long in K-12 education, the only special interests represented the employees, the adults in the system. But now, thankfully, the kids have a union of their own, and they're called parents. They're showing up at school board meetings. We saw how well that worked out. With the Department of Justice basically labeling them as domestic terrorists. The FBI created a threat tag specifically for parents protesting at school board meetings about curriculum disagreements. The unions told us for a long time the public schools were democratically accountable. If you don't like it, you can just show up at the school board meetings. They'll listen to you. They didn't want to listen to us. They cut off our mics. They called us domestic terrorists. But guess what? Parents banded together. And 26 states have since left the National School Boards Association after they sent that letter to the department, to the Biden administration. And we now have 12 states with universal school choice. In 2020, there were 0 states with universal school choice. What do I mean by that? Every single family, regardless of income, background, zip code in those states, can all take their kids' education dollars to the school that works best for them. And it doesn't have to be a public school. It can be a private school or a home-based education option as well. It's a sea change in support for the issue among elected officials. Democrats have been against it for a long time, and that's only because the Democratic Party is a wholly owned subsidiary of the teachers union. You think about Randy Weingarten's union, 99.97% of her campaign contributions from AFT went to Democrats in 2022. It's a money laundering operation. It ought to be illegal. It's been like that for decades. But now parents have woken up and they're taking their energy to the ballot box too. And we saw what happened with Terry McAuliffe in Virginia, the Democrat, former governor of Virginia, in a state that went 10 points to Biden the year before. He lost after saying, I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach on the debate stage. Glenn Youngkin, the Republican, leaned into parental rights as a political winner. And that, I hope, and I talk about in chapter 4 of the Parent Revolution, will lead to some Democrats coming along too, because now they got to deal with the kids union and not just the teachers union. And we have seen some Democrats defect on the issue in recent years. And that's good news for parents in the end.
And although what the media portrayed and with the way the Justice Department sort of labeled the domestic terrorist parents, seemed like they were mostly white parents, but my understanding is that parents of color are some of the biggest enthusiasts for instance, charter school and school choice.
Absolutely. You look at the polling from my home state of Texas, the biggest supporters of school choice in the poll were Black Democrats. So, I mean, the union narrative is completely backwards. And if you think about it, in the 1950s, the unions actually locked arms with staunch segregationists against school vouchers because they knew getting an opportunity for students who didn't have it before would lead to more racial integration and socioeconomic integration, whereas the union will claim the opposite. But it also, if you think about Florida, Governor DeSantis, he won by 20 points in 2022. We know this. But back in 2018, he barely won by a fraction of a point against Andrew Gillum, the Democrat. A lot of people thought he was going to, the Democrat was going to win. The headline in the Wall Street Journal the next day was that school choice moms tipped the governor's race in Florida. They were looking at CNN exit polling, finding that Black moms in particular came out in force for DeSantis, much higher than expected. And the story was that his opponent, Andrew Gillum, a Black Democrat, actually came out against the voucher program, benefiting over 100,000 kids at the time, which were disproportionately low income and non-white kids. Those parents might have become single issue voters on this because they wanted their kid to get a better opportunity. They wanted that scholarship to get their kid into to have a better future. And so that they might have disagreed with DeSantis on everything else, but school choice was so important to them that might have put DeSantis over, give him enough votes to actually win in 2018. And the whole country would have been different if things would have turned out differently in Florida, because Florida was a beacon of hope with the schools opened before everywhere else.
COVID,
and COVID. And it was despite the best efforts of the union. They sued DeSantis. The Florida Education Association sued DeSantis to try to keep the schools closed. Thankfully, they lost.
Wow. So talk to me a little bit about modern homeschooling. It's not, I think, before Caleb, you might want to come in on this too, but I used to think of homeschooling as sort of, conspiracy theorists holding their kids at home so they're not exposed to any evil ideas. You know what I mean? And this is sort of
getting real personal here, Drew. It really sounds like you're talking about someone specific right now.
But well, no, I actually thought of it that way before I met you. But you were the one that told me that, sometimes that motivated things a long time ago. But reality, the school itself was very evolved. It was there was a whole system in place, and there was not just the educational system, but there was a social and even sports thing attached to it. So it's a whole different. It's a very evolved, highly effective educational system now.
Yeah, and I will say there are forms of socialization that are not positive in the government school system. I went to government schools all through K through 12 education, and kids were playing this game called 10 seconds. You'd fight each other for 10 seconds. That was the fun thing to do. And people were getting rolled into gangs in the bathrooms. That was the cool thing to do. People were doing drugs and other promiscuous activities as well. So hey, the socialization is not always good socialization. And when you homeschool your kids, you can capitalize on the positive forms of socialization while minimizing negative forms of socialization, also including bullying. There was also a call in March, about 2020, right before the schools all closed because of the COVID issue. Elizabeth Bartholet was a Harvard professor, put out an 80-page law review article arguing to have a presumptive ban on homeschooling. And she used all of these outlier cases to try to argue why, well, there's might be some abuse at home, so we got to outlaw homeschooling for everybody. I mean, it was basically turning the Fourth Amendment on its head, making everybody guilty until proven innocent. This is a slippery slope that I don't want to go down. And look, they don't bring that same energy to the government school system. 1 in 10 kids are estimated to experience educator sexual misconduct by the time they graduate from high school. And do we call to shut down all the public schools because of that? No, we make sure that if there is abuse, we take care of it, and we should do that at the home, and we should also do it with the government school system as well. But we shouldn't say, oh, because 0.1% of people might not get homeschooling right, then nobody should be allowed to direct the upbringing of their children. But you're right, homeschooling doesn't look the same. And one of the big things that's kind of increased lately is hybrid homeschooling, where maybe you go into a brick and mortar school a couple times a day, a couple times a week. The rest of the week you'll do it at home, or maybe it's fewer hours per day, or maybe it's a homeschool co-op or a micro school. I mean, people kind of figured this out during COVID when we started to call these things pandemic pods, where you'd get 5 to 10 children together in a household, and you basically economize on the process of homeschooling. You either band together, pool resources, and hire one tutor or teacher for your school at home with 10 children, or you could have one teacher be a parent that is good at math.
A friend of mine,
teacher, parent that's good at English,
did that though, and he almost got arrested. I don't know what the deal, back in California, it was just ridiculous. Susan, could you put on the phone thing? Adam's calling me, and he has a lot of interesting things to say about the phone deal. The phone, it's in, just turn it on there on the board. There we are. Hang on,
might not work. Oh, it will work. Oh.
Hello?
Hey, can you hear me, Adam?
Yeah.
You're live on our stream right now, and I called you. I called you up because I'm talking to Corey DeAngelis about school. Oh, do you guys? Yeah.
I don't think they can hear each other.
Yes, you can hear. And we're talking about school choice and charter schools. And I thought you called, and I thought, oh, you have strong feelings about this. I thought I'd give you a chance to just kind of ring in on your position on it, and maybe ask Corey any questions you might have.
Yeah. Well, the last time we did this, I couldn't hear your guest.
Oh, can you hear Corey? Corey, say hello. See if he can hear you.
Hey, Adam, how's it going?
Can you hear him?
No.
Okay. Well, go ahead and give me.
Why would it be different than the last time we did this?
You know why? Because the question is, we're in New York on a totally different system, and I had hopes.
Oh, all right.
I would have known.
That's a viable.
No, I knew
answer.
it wasn't going to work.
But Susan knew, like you, it wouldn't
But
work.
anyways, he'll repeat whatever.
But go ahead, go if you have any questions. Corey's an expert in this whole situation, and I've heard you talk about it many times. And just sort of drop something in here, and let's see what Corey says about it.
All right. I'm not an expert, but I like competition. And we understand that competition brings out the best in all, facets of life, automotive, manufacturing, sports, and all the like. But for some reason, when it comes to schools, we've just decided that, the LAUSD needs to have a monopoly. And I don't like it. I don't think the test scores, I think the test scores support me not liking it. And certainly COVID supports it, because I don't want one paranoid, corrupt group who's in charge of getting Gavin Newsom reelected, in charge of when we can open schools or whether to shut schools or any of it. So in general, I like competition. In general, I think statistically it favors the most vulnerable, the people they always talk about, the black and the brown kids that they pretend to care about. And mostly the reason I like it is because the Democrats and the teachers unions fight violently against it. which suggests to me it must be a good thing if the teachers' unions have a big problem with it.
All right. I will call you back later and tell you what Corey says. Thank you for that. All right?
Thank you.
All right, man. Thank you. He's got a great point, though, right? Which is having a monopoly prevents competition, and their instinct he immediately distrusts, and they are the same people that brought us a re-election of Gavin Newsom.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I've been on Adam's show a couple of times. It's been a while. So if you can remind him, hey, I'd like to join him again soon, that'll be great. But look, he's right.
All right, absolutely.
There are 29 studies on the subject of school choice competition and the outcomes in the public schools. 26 of the 29 studies find positive effects. School choice is a rising tide that lifts all boats. Competition works in every industry. It works in the education sector as well. But that's why the teachers unions don't like it. They don't want to have to compete. They want to be able to twiddle their thumbs all day, not do anything. They want to be able to close the schools like during the COVID era and have nobody ask questions about it. No other profession did this. And I don't blame the teachers. I blame the system itself because of the incentives that are baked into it. They didn't just keep their same job security and pay, whereas no other industry did this. They also actually profited from keeping the schools closed. They were able to say, hey, we're closed because we need more money. They do the same thing over and over again. It's the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And in places like Chicago, they received about $5 billion in so-called COVID relief, 190 billion nationwide in so-called COVID relief since March of 2020. And look, the radical left has figured out that they can infiltrate the government school system and control the minds of other people's children. They don't even have to have their own kids anymore. That's why the parent revolution is so important, because look, even if you don't have your own kids or if you're homeschooling your own kids, they can drift this country in a more leftward or progressive direction without even having their own kids. You can't win this war just by outpopulating them, because 50 million kids go through the government school system every year for 13 years of their lives for 7 hours a day. Yet you have to strike at the root of the problem. And one way to do that is to fight back at the school board meetings. And if they don't listen to you, go and push for the money to follow the child so that they have an incentive to listen to you. Maybe if you go to the school board next time and you have your money and you can say, hey, I can go somewhere else and take my money with me, maybe the school board will say, okay, let's not turn this guy's mic off. Let's not label him as an evil person or try to drag him out of here in cuffs or try to mobilize the FBI to rain down havoc on parents for having the audacity to want to have more of a say in their kids' education. Let's maybe listen to this person and try to be a partner, try to treat them as a customer as opposed to treating them as an evil person. So almost counterintuitively, when you have school choice, because of that competition, it almost reduces the likelihood that you need to use it because the public schools up their game. This happened in Florida too. In Florida, over the past couple of decades, since they've expanded school choice, they've improved their outcomes on a system-wide basis. A couple decades ago, they were at the bottom of the pack in the nation's report card on their test scores for math and reading. Fast forward to today, the U.S. News and World Report ranked Florida #1 for education, and they're at the top 5 for the nation's report card, despite spending far less than the national.
Well, it's never been about the money in terms of getting the quality of education. That so clearly has been shown over and over again. Caleb, I wonder if you have anything more to add to the conversation on homeschooling.
Actually. So I don't know if you researched any of this, but I was actually homeschooled K through 12. So I was homeschooled all the way back in the days, actually in Texas as well. So I know that homeschoolers are a very powerful force there. We used to show up, I guess it was almost every year back when George Bush was the governor there, and we would show up in like lines and lines of parents and kids middle of the day for the homeschool day that was at the Texas Capitol. So we were very involved in that politically. And I remember the thing, my parents, they weren't so much in favor of this idea because they were afraid that the moment you start taking $1 from the government, then the government finds ways to get their claws in to what you're actually trying to do, which is to separate your kids from the government. So how is this school choice? How does it get around that issue of the government then wanting to make little changes if you're taking their dollars?
Yeah, thanks, Caleb. The argument is that with government shekels comes government shackles. But the reality is you can get the shackles without the shekels. And the government does
Yeah.
regulate homeschooling. In places like New York, they don't have any private school choice, and they have the worst homeschooling laws on the books. You have to take the state test for the right to educate your own kids at home. In Oregon in 1922, guess what they did? They outlawed private education altogether. You had to send your kid to Caesar. Thankfully, 3 years later, in 1925, Pierce versus Society of Sisters, the Supreme Court ruled famously, quote, "The child is not the mere creature of the state." But basically, Caleb, I don't want us to make perfect the enemy of the good. We should take the incremental win. This is all voluntary. No one's forced to take the money. We should fight against any regulation if that ever comes. But look, if you're on Randy Weingarten's side and Joe Biden's side and not my side and Milton Friedman's side, you're probably on the wrong side when it comes to freedom and education. And guess what? The Texas Homeschool Coalition is in favor of our bill every year. And by the way, when you have more school choice, look, politics is all about organized interests pushing for what they want. The unions do it all the time. When you have school choice, you get more people benefiting from private and home education. You create a broader coalition to fight back against those authoritarians in office when they do come to take away your right to educate your kids. So look, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty, and we have a better chance of winning this battle with school choice because we create a broader tent.
It's school choice. Like, it's not like school forced. You're not forced to homeschool. You're not forced to take their money. You're not forced to do it. It's school choice, which that makes sense to me.
Well, listen, this is all interesting. I'm glad you're in there stirring it up. I worry that education is our most significant problem in this country. I mean, you can trace almost every problem back to school systems and how our kids are educated. And I'm not talking about what you guys were just discussing in terms of how kids are being indoctrinated or how the shekels and the shackles get involved with education. I'm really just worried about the quality of the education that kids are getting and us being able to compete on an international basis in a world where China and Japan and all these other countries are going to eat our lunch easily, no problem. And then when people go to college, they might be getting some intellectual development, but it's often in areas that have no real utility and no application, are not connected to reality, even in terms of the thinking process. Susan, you want to say something?
Well, but that's the whole plan by China, right? They want to take those Harvard spots. They want they want us to be dumb and mandated to stay home. And
they may not want those Harvard spots. Well, they're going to take the science spots.
Yes,
they're
they
going to
do.
take the engineering and science spots.
They want to get in any way they can.
That's true.
Sorry.
But Corey, where do you want people to go to learn more? What kind of support do you need? And where can people follow you?
You can follow me on X, formerly Twitter. It's at DeAngelis Corey, and get a copy of The Parent Revolution. It's a national bestseller. It's endorsed by Trump. You can take Senator Ted Cruz's advice from my home state of Texas. He says on the back, you can ruin Randy Weingarten's day by reading this book. And guess what? It's a limited time deal on Amazon right now. 36% off is all. Yeah, so there's the Trump endorsement as well. Look it up. You can just Google The Parent Revolution, use whatever search engine you want. It'll pop up. And it's making the teachers union's mind explode right now. There was a teachers union boss in Wisconsin actually called to burn the book. They're total hypocrites on this issue. They're calling us book banners for wanting appropriate content.
Don't see the irony of educators calling for book burn. No irony in saying that. Well, I will send Adam your request to be on his program. I'm sure you guys will heat it up there too. And we appreciate you being here. We'll talk to you again soon, Corey.
Hey, thank you so much.
You got it. DeAngelis Corey DeAngelis. Interesting stuff today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Tomorrow, let's get Dr. Kelly Victory makes a repeat performance here. She comes back to join us. We'll get some update from her, and Harry Fisher joins as well. Susan's show is tomorrow. Kelly Victory is going to be on that show.
She's doing my show too.
Talking about...
We're going to call out the government. We're going to talk about the Trump assassination. Oh my God, she's dying to talk about that. Oh. And we're going to talk about the future of Ozempic and a little bit of psychic intuition on COVID-19 and that whole experience.
Interesting.
That's all Dr. Kelly stuff.
And then next Tuesday, I believe it's Tuesday, Peter Navarro in here. He was just out of prison.
Fresh out of prison.
I don't think Susan understands how big a deal that one is.
Wait, he's the guy whose brother was with us? Is that the same guy?
No, that's a different one.
Did we have Peter Navarro's? No.
That guy's out of jail too.
Assange.
Yeah, we got to get him on.
Yeah, that would be a big deal also. Naomi Wolf just signed up for next week as well. John Bowden comes in. Christine Anderson. Just so much coming up. Do stay with us. We appreciate you being here, supporting the show, supporting the people that support us. Anything else, Caleb, before I wrap this up?
No, that's all very good. That was a great episode.
Interesting, right? Yeah, good episode as always. And a reminder about, we're talking about mattress toppers for a second. Susan and I love the one we got from mypillow.com. They make a difference in the quality of sleep, amongst other things. Right now, Mike Lindell has a special for our audience when you use code DRDREW at checkout, or when you go to mypillow.com/Dr. Drew. You get 50% off the Queen and King toppers. They're so nice over there. Think about redirecting your hard-earned dollars to an American company that respects and appreciates you as their customer. Go to mypillow.com/Dr. Drew and check out mystore.com/Dr. Drew. Appreciate y'all being here. We will see you tomorrow at noon with Dr. Kelly Victory.
Get those towels.
Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources at drdrew.com/help.